Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Convergence Compass, Navigate, Collaborate, Solve. We're thrilled that you're here with us today. From wherever across the country you're joining us, thank you for taking the time to explore how we can work together across divides to solve shared problems. It means a lot to have so many of you here, people who know that with the right mindsets and skill sets, we can achieve connection and collaboration across our differences. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Mariah Levison, the President and CEO of Convergence Center for Policy Resolution. At Convergence, we bring together leaders, doers, and experts from across the ideological, political, and cultural spectrum, many of whom never thought that they could talk to each other, to build trusting relationships, identify breakthrough solutions, and form unlikely alliances for constructive change on seemingly intractable issues. Our and our partners' work has shown again and again that there are reliably effective ways to bridge divides and solve problems. Today's event is a celebration of that currently countercultural truth and of our shared commitment to inspiring and equipping more Americans with the mindsets and skill sets to help people come together across divides. We created Convergence Compass, a direct response to what we've been hearing from so many of you, government leaders, educators, community advocates, business executives, that people want to come together across differences but often don't know how. A More in Common study that came out this past March that we are huge fans of found that 2/3 of Americans value connecting across divides. So we know that the desire is there, but the skills and the structures to do it well are often missing. And that's why we work together to develop Convergence Compass. It's a one-of-a-kind online learning program that gives people the tools to understand why we're so divided, what drives that division, and most importantly, how to move from disagreement to understanding, collaboration, and problem solving. This program was developed in partnership with the Constructive Dialogue Institute and the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, with generous support from the New Pluralists Collaborative. It's part of our broader body of work through the Convergence Learning Lab, which exists to make our proven collaborative problem-solving methodology more accessible and scalable. I've spent my entire career helping people work through conflict to find common ground, and I have never seen another readily and widely accessible tool that takes people all the way from understanding our division to applying practical strategies for solving shared problems. I'm thrilled that Convergence Compass finally fills that gap. It's a flexible program. One can take the full learning journey or pick and choose the pieces that resonate most with your work, and is designed for real people doing real work. City council members, educators, clergy, nonprofit, and business leaders, anyone who wants to navigate conflict more effectively and lead problem-solving efforts in their own sphere of influence. We built Convergence Compass because this is a moment that matters. The divides we face are deep, but the appetite to bridge them is strong. My hope is that Convergence Compass will meet this moment by equipping leaders with the confidence, curiosity, and courage to bring people together, because that's where real change begins. As you'll see throughout today's program, this work has been a true collaboration. We couldn't have created Convergence Compass alone. It came to light through the insight, creativity, and dedication of our incredible partners. And I'm so grateful for the expertise and heart that each organization and individual brought to this project. So with that, I'm delighted to turn it over to our partners, Lauren Higgins from the New Pluralists Collaborative, and then we'll hear from Mylene Duong from the Constructive Dialogue Institute, and finally, Juliana Tarfour from the UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center to share a bit more about themselves and the course. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Lauren Higgins, Director of Ecosystem Strategy at New Pluralists. And at New Pluralists, we're really focused on investing in people, organizations, and ideas that are bringing pluralism to life in communities across the US. And we supported the Convergence Compass because it feels like a critical addition to the growing ecosystem of organizations that are contributing practical and just-in-time skills needed for citizens and leaders to practice pluralism out in our communities. And so you might be wondering, what is pluralism? We're using that word a lot. So we define pluralism in two ways. One, as a worldview, meaning the belief that coexistence of different opinions, ways of life, and values enrich all members of society, and that all people deserve respect and belonging. And we also think about it as a practice, which you'll hear about a lot today. A practice in the way that we engage with the diversity that we encounter every single day, including working across differences to get things done. So what can this look like? For New Pluralists, when New Pluralists started and was first forming in 2021, there was a diverse group of cross-ideological funders and field builders that came together, including many of the hosts on this call. And one of the things that they asked is, okay, given all of our differences, what can the guiding principles be that will really help us direct our work over the next coming years together? And they came up with 5 principles, guiding principles that I want to share with you that I think will kind of help frame some things we're going to hear in this call. The first principle was honor human dignity. So meaning we listen from a place of mutual respect and uphold individual dignity, worth, and potential of every person. The second principle was take responsibility for repair. So we confront our past and reckon with our present in order to heal and strengthen our communities. Number 3, widen the circle. We expand our sense of who belongs and embrace our common humanity. And number 4, find strength in difference, meaning designing better solutions through our differences, not just in spite of them. And finally, the final principle was strive for a greater sum. And this really helped us think about challenging the zero-sum views that are out there, that one group's gain is another's loss, and really looking for creative win-win situations through curiosity, collaboration, and creativity. So the Convergence Compass, in so many ways, as you'll hear, really provides the mindsets, tools, and skills for leaders to put these guiding principles of pluralism into practice. Leaders anywhere can just log on and develop essential skills, start applying them to real-world challenges immediately. And this just-in-time learning model is a proven best practice, and now it's even easier for you to access now that the Compass exists. So I'll wrap up briefly, and I'll just end by saying that obviously this is a critical moment in our country, and the Convergence Compass offers everyone a practical, real-time set of strategies for leaders who want to make a difference, both in your communities and your organizations. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mylene Duong from the Constructive Dialogue Institute to tell us more.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Hi, everybody. My name is Mylene Duong. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at the Constructive Dialogue Institute. And CDI is a nonpartisan nonprofit. And primarily, we work with higher education to provide science-based tools that help people to engage across lines of difference. So we work with colleges and universities to holistically advance a culture of dialogue and open inquiry on their campuses. And I'm thrilled to have been a part of this collaboration with Convergence and with the Greater Good Science Center. And thank you so much to Lauren and the New Pluralists for your generous support of this project. And I'm thrilled to be here because this really builds on the work that we have all done in understanding what the mindset and the skill sets are to engage productively across lines of difference. But what Convergence Compass does is that it takes it one step further by helping people to understand how do you build from that foundation to begin to collectively solve problems together and advance collective action. I'm incredibly excited to have been a part of this effort and excited to be here today. And I'll pass it to my dear colleague, Juliana.
Thank you, Mylene. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And thank you so much, Convergence, for hosting this, and New Pluralists for supporting this work. I'm Juliana Tafour. I am the Bridging Differences Program Director at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And to give you a little rundown for those of you who don't know us, at the GGSC, we envision a world where all people recognize that their own well-being is intertwined with the well-being of others, including people who seem different from themselves. And we primarily do this by translating research to practice and disseminating it through communities of practice, learning fellowships, workshops, multimedia content, etc. And I will say through our bridging programs specifically, we help people bridge differences to reduce social fragmentation, solve collective problems, and foster belonging and social cohesion. And we have developed an array of tools to help Americans bridge divides, ranging from 2 versions of our Bridging Differences playbook, one for higher education, one for general audiences. We have online courses, one available through edX, articles, videos, and more. But truly, we knew that there was a gap in tools for solving shared problems together. And we are so excited to be part of filling that gap through Convergence Compass. I will also say that, speaking to what Lauren was sharing earlier, navigating our differences through whether it's productive disagreement or coming together across our differences is a design feature of our democracy. And we've all seen how rapid demographic shifts, divisive political rhetoric, and also increasing ideological isolation mean that we are no longer seeing our differences as our strength. And Convergence Compass is here to support us with the mindsets and the skill set to make our differences a source of strength rather than fear and division. And going back to that zero-sum thinking with this belief that a person or group's gain comes at the direct expense of another's, really neglects the possibility of collaborative positive sum outcomes where everyone can benefit. So this program not only demonstrates that zero-sum thinking is a fallacy, but also teaches participants concrete tools for achieving mutually beneficial solutions. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Mariah.
Thanks, Juliana. I don't know if anyone on the webinar here has had the pleasure of developing an online course before, but the tech side of it is quite tricky and a little painstaking. But what was a huge joy was working with Lauren, Mylene, and Juliana, and some of their other colleagues. Truly a dream team of folks to work on to try to develop more tools to do what is really my experience most people want to do, which is to find positive relationships with each other and be able to solve our shared problems together. So we'll be dropping in the chat a summary of what you can find in each of the courses and the different modalities for participating in them. But now what I want to prioritize in our time together is giving you a taste of what Convergence Compass is like. So in just a second, I'm going to pass the mic to our phenomenal program director, Gabriel Herrera. He is going to walk you through one of the key tools in the Compass program, something called interest-based problem solving, which is a tool for doing some of the things that Lauren and Mylene and Juliana talked about, going beyond adversarial win-lose approaches to conflict to figuring out how to achieve solutions of mutual benefit. We chose to highlight this one tool from all of the wonderful content in the Compass for 2 reasons. One is that lots of research, including the study that was cited earlier from More in Common, demonstrates that Americans are much more motivated to come together across lines of difference when it's in the service of solving shared problems. And the second is that in my experience, the mindset that achieving mutually beneficial solutions is possible is key to getting folks interested in the rest of the mindsets and skill sets in the course. When people recognize that there are ways for me and my family and my community and you and your family and your community to both get our needs met, they're much more willing and motivated to do the hard work of bridging divides and reestablishing trust and collaboration. And as a bonus, this is a skill that you can use every day in a wide variety of settings. Just ask my kids and my husband. Gabe?
Thank you, Mariah. So as Mariah mentioned, I'm a programs director at Convergence. I'm going to quickly introduce myself and then talk a bit about what we'd like to demonstrate today. So I currently lead a collaborative problem-solving process in St. Louis on economic mobility. So bringing folks together that have different perspectives, kind of a wide range of stakeholders to together co-create solutions for making high-paying quality jobs a reality for low-income residents. So in addition to that, I also run our Learning Lab, which is our tool here for building capacity and equipping others to use our collaborative problem-solving process to address divisive issues in their own institutions and communities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and talk a bit about collaborative problem solving and bridging across divides. Some of the foundational pieces for that are really about what we focus on in Compass. Compass goes, of course, much deeper than what I'm able to cover today, but wanted to give just a little taste. I do want to have this feel a bit interactive. I know that folks kind of bounced around and we ended up in this shared Zoom space together. So I wanted to ask one question to the group to make sure that everyone feels like we're all together here. And that question is, when you hear the word conflict, what's the first word that comes to mind? If you wouldn't mind using the chat, because I'm going to have us use that throughout, just want to make sure everyone's able to access the chat okay. So if you hear the word conflict, kind of what's the first thing that comes to mind? I'm seeing some folks say opportunity, anxiety, concern, tension, wrestle, not being on the same page, unmet needs, disagreement, stress, bias, frustration. These are all wonderful. And some of them, I think, are kind of the traditional way that we might think about conflict, that it can be something scary, something negative, something that is a hard, difficult process to go through. And then I'm hearing some folks also put in the chat that there's opportunity, that there's something to be gained by going through that. So what I want to do is just mention that for us, when we think about collaborative problem solving, it really does all begin with the right mindset to be able to effectively use the needed skill set. There are 5 main components to a problem-solving mindset that are covered in Compass. And I'm going to briefly go through those before we go through our interactive exercise. The first is that conflict can be constructive. So for those that put opportunity in the chat, right, really seeing conflict in that way, that it's a way to learn and to push thinking to a new level. When I was in graduate school studying conflict resolution at the Carter School at George Mason, a lot of what we discussed was about how sometimes the absence of conflict can be interpreted as apathy, as not caring. So seeing folks that are engaging in conflict as they care about something and thus want to try and figure out a better way to move forward. The next piece here is around everyone getting the benefit of the doubt. And that can be difficult, especially nowadays, but trying to remember that most people don't have negative intentions and that those are often rare. And to try and think really kind of where are people coming from? What are their experiences or their values? And why do they think that the way that they do? And pushing yourself to try and get curious, which leads to our next point around curiosity being the cure. You know, as a mediator, as a facilitator, the most important question I think I can ask is why? Trying to understand what is really fueling a person's given stance on something, the perspective they have, to try and really be curious, especially with those that you disagree with, which is often the hardest thing to do. Our process is really all about having relationships be front and center. So focusing on building those quality relationships, which take time and they're not easy to do. And it does take a lot of intentionality. And so there are connecting questions that we often use to try and have folks be vulnerable with each other, build trust, and really share why they feel that the way that they do is so important in terms of how they see a given issue. So taking the time to make relationships a really big part of things. And then you'll hear us talk about higher ground. So that's the idea that we're not just looking for some middle ground or common ground, but really thinking about what's most important to everyone involved, and then how do we integrate those perspectives and develop something bigger, better, and higher than would have been able to have been accomplished if we were just working alone in our silos. So it's not this win-lose paradigm. It's about trying to create something that would have otherwise not been possible. So I just want to have that framing as we go into the next pieces of this process together. So as Mariah mentioned, we can't talk about everything that Compass talks about in those 5 courses here today, but kind of at the heart of the field And what's really foundational for this work is interest-based problem solving. This is an extremely effective tool and transformative approach. Some of you might be familiar with the book Getting to Yes, which is really foundational to the field of conflict resolution. I do want to share another story with folks that you might not be as familiar with. This is a story that really shaped how I understand positions and interests, which is referred to often as the orange story. And the way I like to tell this is that once upon a time, there was a father who had two children. And one day the kids come running and screaming to dad, saying that they were upset. There was only one orange left in the house and they both wanted it. So the dad does what any good parent would do. He gets the knife, splits an orange in half, and has them share it. His thinking was great, problem solved 50-50. The dad should win Dad of the Year award, right? Well, unfortunately, he was wrong. The two kids both take their halves of the orange and run away crying to their rooms. And the solution here ended up being a complete failure. So what could have been done differently? Maybe the dad was a mediator, a facilitator, a problem solver, and instead took the time to ask each kid, well, why do you want the orange? And when asked, one expresses the desire to make orange juice and needs the fruit to do that, and the other for baking muffins and really just needs the peel for the recipe. So by understanding what motivated each kid to want the orange, they're able to arrive at a solution here where each got 100% of what they're looking for instead of just some easy compromise solution. So you can see here, there never really was a conflict. Each one could get 100% of what they were looking for. So the lesson here is to ask questions. If people are unhappy about a particular situation, ask why. Again, such an important question to have ready to ask at any moment. Get past that immediate answer, that positional statement of what it is they want, and try to understand the source of the problem. So with that in mind, I'm going to have us walk through what that looks like in practice. So for today, we're going to be talking about issues, which again are the initial kind of topics or areas of controversy that people wish to discuss. So if you wouldn't mind, each person just take a moment and think about an issue that's impacting your organization or community. One where there's really at least two sides that hold strongly entrenched positions. So take a moment to think about that. And for those who feel comfortable, please feel free to share in the chat. Obviously, only do so if you feel comfortable, but I do want you to keep that issue in mind as we walk through the next couple of pieces together. I see some folks already putting in the chat affordable housing, immigration policies, poverty, gun violence. These are really major issues impacting many communities across the United States. So thank you for sharing, and I'm sure more are going to come. For today, I'm going to go ahead and have us focus on one. So again, as a reminder, the positions are the what. So that's the fixed solution. And the interests are the why, the underlying needs that express why someone feels the way that they do about a position. So the example that I want to use to just illustrate this today is around schools allowing students to use cell phones. So something that I think people have immediate responses to. Perhaps you're a parent yourself or a student, and you have a really clear sense of what should or should not happen here. So I'm going to ask us to go through and think about what could possibly be the underlying needs and interests behind these stated positions. So if someone's saying cell phones should be banned, that's one side. The other side might be that students should always be allowed to have cell phones, right? Those are kind of the two positions here that I want us to explore. So with the chat, again, I'm going to encourage you all, let's first start with the ban side. What would be potential whys? Why would someone say that students should not be allowed to have cell phones in school? What would be something that folks say on the ban side? These are wonderful. Too distracting, interferes with classroom learning and interaction, too many distractions. bullying, especially nowadays, lacking the ability to focus, cheating. These are really great ones, and ones that I think a lot of people can understand why someone would feel that way. AI. I'm gonna have us switch gears just to be mindful of time and have us think about the allow side. So why would someone on the allow side say that students should be able to have cell phones at school? Why would someone say that students should be allowed to have cell phones at school? Emergencies, those came up really quickly. Contact parents again in cases of emergency. Having autonomy, maybe there's basic administrative tasks or duties they need to get accomplished, coordinating responsibilities. Also, it's a learning tool, social cohesion. These are wonderful. When I do this, I kind of feel like I'm the host of Family Feud and to say, survey says, right? But next, what I have here is just some examples. A lot of you gave great ones already. But on the band side, you can see we have encouraged focused learning environment, reducing cheating, preventing cyberbullying or social drama, and encouraging face-to-face communication and social skills. It's kind of hard to be against some of these. Maybe, you don't agree with all of them, but you can start to understand some of the nuanced reasons why someone might hold that entrenched position. Now we go to the allow side, and survey says safety and instant communication with parents, also access to tools for learning, students' autonomy and responsibility, and managing personal needs. A lot of what you all have already shared. So as we dig deeper, it's possible for us to start thinking about how we develop what we again call these higher ground solutions, integrating what's most important to both sides in terms of coming up with a co-created solution that might better address everyone's needs. As a part of Compass and at Convergence, we talk about that by using this options framework, which stands for only proposals that include others' needs succeed. So the challenge here is to really be thinking about how to best integrate what's most important so you can come up with something that is wiser and more durable. Again, I want to be mindful of our time together, and I have a special guest that I want us to be able to hear about their experience. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn things over to talking a bit about our pilot cohort program. So in partnership with the National Association of Counties, we facilitated our first pilot program, which was designed for county officials. Over 11 weeks, getting to go through the 5 courses together and then meet bi-weekly to talk about how there's application from the content to the real world issues that they're facing in their communities. And we also engaged in having peer sessions and ongoing coaching and getting to really hear about the different ways that this collaborative problem-solving approach can be easily applied and what are the areas that are more difficult and require some fine-tuning. So with that, I do want to introduce Jim Dyer. Jim, if you're with us, I would love for you to come off mute. I see you. Thank you so much for being here. You were one of the 11 that were part of our first cohort program. Would you mind just quickly introducing yourself, saying where you're from and the work that you do?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. My name is Jim Dyer. I am currently the county administrator in Leelanau County. Leelanau is up in the little finger of Michigan. If you look at the map, we're on the the northwest side of the state. A couple years ago, we were billed as the most beautiful place in the country, where the Sleeping Bear National Dunes Lakeshore is. So that's where I've spent the last couple years after having been downstate, primarily working as a litigation attorney, and I transitioned into government administration a couple of years ago. Started out as a manager for a year and a half at a small village in Leelanau County, and then ended up as the county administrator, where I currently serve and have been for the last 6 months.
Thank you, Jim. And I wanted to ask you and have you share with others, what motivated you to apply to the Convergence Compass cohort program? What were you hoping to get out of the training?
Well, it's interesting, Gabe, because I saw the the application process for the pilot cohort program probably the first month that I was working here in Leelanau, and I knew that I was going to be involved in a lot of problem solving and mediation as county administrator. So I thought this would be a good way to try to get myself into it a little deeper. I had done quite a lot of mediation as a litigator, but that's a different process. You know, it's a very focused process, and the types of things that I knew I'd be getting into were not quite that way. So it looked like it'd be a really good way to try to kind of segue into a problem solving mindset for my new position. And the thing that attracted me the most was this notion that it was science based, or that was based on neuroscience type of and psychology types of studies that were showing how conflict could be managed as a process. So that intrigued me quite a lot as well.
And what would you say were your main takeaways from the cohort program? What felt valuable to you?
Really two things. I was able to learn really a structured approach to problem solving, and it really convinced me what you talked about during the program, about there would be a greater likelihood of success, not just that you'd solve the problem, but that people would be satisfied with the solution that you reached. Because I'd been involved in a number of times over the years in my, in a past part of my life. I actually also was an elected official. I was the mayor in a little small town, or on the city council for a total of 8 years, and we had a number of issues come up, not the least of which were zoning disputes. We had a National Historic Landmark District that was also a hospital that was surrounded by a National Historic Landmark District, and there was one group that felt that if you took away one contributing structure from the National Landmark District, it would collapse. And if we didn't allow the hospital to expand as much as it wanted to, the whole town would turn into a ghost town. So there were really, really hard positions, and we tried to solve those problems, but we got solutions, but we failed miserably in terms of convincing others that it was the right, not just the thing to do, but the right thing to do. And the other thing I really learned in the cohort program was the difference between what position bargaining is, which is almost impossible to do, and what interest bargaining is. And if you get people to focus on what their interests are and why they hold the positions that they hold, there is a much greater chance that you're going to get them to come together to a meaningful solution, and one that's going to last. Those are the two biggest takeaways.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really at the heart of what we're trying to get at, right? Is that, it takes a bit of going deeper and understanding really why folks feel the way that they do, so that you can think about solutions that will fully address those, and not just the fastest solutions that meet the most kind of obvious, most immediate needs. I'm curious, Jim, since the cohort program wrapped up in September, how have you been able to apply what you've learned in your work, or are there areas of your work that you hope to be able to apply what you've learned?
Oh, I think so, very much so, Gabe. In fact, I would say right from the very beginning, even during the program itself, I started to do, I guess I'd say I've always thought of myself as a good active listener. The idea that you listen before you speak. That's actually pretty easy to do, and once you put your mind to it. The biggest difference is, though, I find myself much more now than before. Well, maybe it's because I was a litigator before and I never cared for what the why was. But I ask people that a lot more. So, okay, I understand your position, but tell me why. Give me some understanding of why you think that way and why you want that to be the solution. And that helps me a lot. I think I can explain myself a lot better to people as to, again, why I might pick a solution. And oftentimes I have to be the one to say, no, we're going to go in this direction, not that direction. I have an opportunity to at least explain why and hopefully get themselves to buy in.
Thank you. And I do see that there's a question in the chat about position bargaining. So, position bargaining is really just negotiating based off of the stated positions that people hold, right? I
Right.
want X or I want Y, but not trying to understand what that exactly involves. Mariah is putting in the chat there as well, building a wall, right, where they are
Yep.
mutually exclusive and not trying to find kind of what led to that wall being constructed in the first place, right?
Yeah, because the wall's there at the beginning, just in the example that you chose, cell phones in school or not. And basically that's the wall. Or call it the fulcrum if you want, the fulcrum that the teeter-totter tips on. It either way, people are bound into their decision. This is good, this is not good, and that's not the best. I really liked what you started, what you called this webinar, navigate, collaborate, and solve, because in hindsight, when I look back on those times when we tried to do what looked like community collaboration, what we did is we jumped right to solve. This is, let's get the people in the room that think this, that think hospital expansion has to be unfettered, and let's get the people that think, we can't modify the National Historic Landmark District. Let's get them all in a room and they're just going to reach a decision, reach a solution. We jumped right to solve. We didn't navigate the problem. We didn't understand the problem and what was underlying it. And as I think back, there are a lot of things where there was commonality that we could have focused on, but didn't.
Well,
And that's why I'm so excited about the program that you're talking about today.
Well, Jim, thank you again. I really appreciate your time and for speaking about your experience. It's so helpful to have you here, and thank you. I did want to just kind of tie what Jim and I were just talking about with the example about, using cell phones in school. So, when we talk about positional bargaining, right, just the stated positions, the walls that are up, right, it's ban, allow. And then as you saw, when we kind of did a little bit of deeper diving, we saw that there's these really easy to understand reasons for why folks have those big feelings. And so a way that you could think about higher ground solutions would be to take a piece from both camps and see if there's a way to tie them together to create something new. So if on one side we have folks that are saying, well, I'm really concerned about distractions in the classroom. On the other side, we have folks saying, but what if there's an emergency? I need to be able to make sure that the cell phone can be used. One thing that folks could start talking about is, well, is there dedicated time, right? Are there times where you know that students are going to be reachable? And aside from that time, then the student should not be allowed to have access to cell phones. But perhaps, they need to be used for enhancing their learning. There are tools, technological tools that they can use. Well, perhaps there is a cell phone that is dedicated for learning purposes, but not to be able to go onto social media or to be used in these other things. You can start to be a bit more creative and see, I hear what's important to you on your side. Here's what's most important to me on my side. Let's try and find a way to put those together and create something that would have otherwise not been possible. So I just want to kind of have us thinking about how there really is opportunity when we take the time to understand what's most important to everyone involved. Mariah, I do want to hand it over to you to help us wrap up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gabe, for sharing that skill, and for Jim for being here to share your experience. That was so helpful to all of our partners, Lauren and Mylene and Juliana, but really to all of you, thank you for spending the last hour, well, 45 minutes after our technical difficulties, with us. And we hope that this, brief window into some of the mindsets and skill sets that are in Compass have given you something to think about, maybe even something to apply. And we hope that we have inspired you to get involved with this program, that you'll take the Compass, but even more so maybe that you'll help us get it into the hands of leaders and problem solvers like Jim and folks in all sectors, so that more citizens have access to reliably effective evidence-based tools for bridging divides and solving problems together. Because again, it's really our experience, and the research backs it up, that is what most of us want. And so we hope that we can be a part of meeting the moment and getting these tools into more folks' hands. You'll see in the chat a discount code for accessing the program, and information on scholarships can be found on our website. We've also worked with philanthropy to make the program available to folks like county commissioners around the country. So again, thank you to all of our partners, our presenters, to all of you for taking the time. And we hope that you will reach out and learn more, and wish you all a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.